Thank you. Hey. You can call me JC Superstar. That was a joke. How's it going, everybody? Yeah, nice to see you. That's a lot of people here. Where is my wife? Oh, there she is. You're so little. This is my wife back there saying hi. She has a camera. There's Cor. That's Corey. And then Jen is over here with red hair in the very back. That's our drummer, Jen. Jen's mom is here too, but she got mad when we sang Happy Birthday last time, so I won't point her out. Anyway, me and Ken got to hang out on the way over here. We talked everything from theology of hell to Mothra. And he asked me not to talk about Mothra. That's a Godzilla villain. But he asked me not to talk about that today, so we're going to talk about other stuff instead. But you know what I really want to do? Ken said we're going to open up for Q&A. That means question and answer. And that's probably what I would most like to do, but maybe before that I'm just going to talk briefly about music and whatnot, and might lead into some questions for what we all want to say. But in a quick word, my name is John. I do sing for Skillet, and I play bass guitar. And we've been doing this for 15 years now, since we first started the band down the street. And we've had some really crazy stories. I won't tell many of those stories, but they're pretty funny. If we get to it, I'll tell some stories. Singing, man. They're probably things you've forgotten in your old age, but it's anyhow. I have some notes. 1 second. JC Superstar. I want to talk about music. I know you guys do other things besides music here and the arts and whatnot, and some of what I would like to say is could be arts in general, and then some of what I'm talking about, of course, is music, because that's what I do. But in general, some of these things can be taken with whatever. I'm very passionate about music in general, and music as a ministry, and as a weapon to change the world. I really believe in that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But briefly, and I don't think I need to say this, but briefly I'd like to just mention a few things of how important music seems to be to God, even though I'm not a theologian. But these are little things that I wrote down because they strike me when I read the Bible. Number one, how much music is used in battle. We probably all know the stories in the Old Testament, whether or not, I guess, horns starting a battle, but also, we all know the story about, God saying, put your musicians in the front, have them worship me, and then I'll win the battle for them, that sort of thing. Always struck me as a kid. I'm just going to list these things off really fast. Number two, music driving out evil spirits. I don't know if you remember that in the Old Testament. David, not King David, but before he was king, David was called in to play for Saul and to drive away these evil spirits and whatnot. I always thought that was pretty awesome. In terms of horns blasting, I only just recently, I just read about, the walls of Jericho, and about once every day they would blast these horns, but they wouldn't speak any words for 6 days. On the seventh day, they blasted on horns, they began to shout, and, the fall of Jericho. Next, music is going to be for eternity. I don't know anything about eternity, but it might be one of the few things that we are able to kind of take with us, if you will, from this world to the next. From what we see in the Bible, we see that we will be worshiping God for eternity. We know that there will be angels, and if you remember, Book of Revelation, creatures, whatever that means. Bunch of Mothras up there. That's a joke. That's not true. Anyway, creatures, constantly, chanting before the Lord, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, these things. So we see that music is going to be happening always and forever. I have more. Also, music was the way that God intended on, if you remember the wise men, when they were first told of Jesus being born, it was like the heralding of Christ being born was all this, this choir of angels singing, and that's when the wise men, saw them, that sort of thing. So, taking it out of biblical references just to our ordinary lives, I think people know this already, but music and the arts in general are among the most important, influential people in the world, which sometimes is surprising to me when they say, top 100 most powerful people in the world and Lady Gaga's on there. Seems like a big surprise to me, but that's the way it is, I guess. That's really weird. But I wrote it down. It was late last night. But that's the way it is. Very important things. Especially if you look at Twitter accounts. So they say the people with the most Twitter, that's how you gauge the power that someone has. Is whether they use that power or not, or whether they use it for good or not for good. That's the way it is. As well as I would say art in general, not just music, but the arts in general is a way that cultures are distinguished from one another. And maybe the easiest way to see that for me is, if you talk about the 70s, what was the 70s like? You immediately think of, disco, and dun, 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 dun. I'll start it right now. 70s, you think of 80s, you think of awesome music. So that's it for that. Music is obviously very powerful, I believe very important to God. I don't really know why, but it seems that music was also before man as well. So it seems that music is kind of an eternal thing. I don't know why God created it that way. That's just the way that it is. So, next thing I want to say after that, the importance of music. I wanted to mention, we all know this, but like in my job, we play with all these bands, and we all know like rock stars are hyper idolized in our society. But really, musicians, I think, have always been that way, and artists idolize people, kind of worship them. It's a very selfish kind of line of work, I guess, because you kind of do it. Not me, but you do it for your own glory. You do it. It's all about me, and you begin to believe all of the worship that you get from other people, and that's why rock stardom is kind of a little bit of a scary thing. And moving from that, it seems this will all make sense in the end. Moving from that is going into an amazing thing about how God has created music for a purpose. I just wanted to mention that music is a gift, and it's not something that everyone can do. I think when I was younger, my mom was a piano teacher, and I didn't want to take piano because I thought it was kind of girly, and my mom would say, well, you have a gift to do it, and I always didn't really understand what she meant. And now that I have my own kids, I have two children, a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son, and being that me and my wife are both musical, I think people assumed our kids would be like, hyper musical. And as it turns out, my daughter can't hit a pitch at all. I don't know why. It's really bizarre. I'm like, no, is this so? And she's constantly hitting a fourth under or above even. It's really not good. And, an amazing thing to me, I thought, for the first time made sense to me as I've gotten a little bit older, that two people can have the same training to do anything in life, whatever that may be, and some people are going to be naturally geared towards doing something. And all of a sudden it just really hit me about how important it is that your gift of music or arts, whatever it is that you do, that you're passionate about, is a gift from God. You can get better at it, and you should strive to be better at it, but in the end, it's on loan from the Lord, so it's not actually yours. You're a steward of the gifts that God gives to you. So it really is a privilege to do something that God seems to think is so important. That's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that music, the arts, cultures are defined by it. People are identified by it. If you go to a high school and you see somebody dressing a certain way, you go, oh yeah, they like this band and this kind of music. And then you see someone else dressed that way and you go, those two people probably get along really good. And as it ends up, all your clusters of friends all dress the same way, and it all kind of typifies the music that they listen to and the art that they're into, or the video games they play. Yeah. Something like that. So God has given us gifts in order to glorify himself, and they're not to be taken lightly, because for whatever reason, they're things that God felt was important enough to herald the coming of the Savior in the world, important enough to herald the fall of the walls of Jericho, so on and so forth. So as we get into this, about our responsibility as musicians, artists, or whatever it is that you're representing, again, I'm talking a lot about music. I know not everybody here is a musician, but that's okay, right? That's what you asked me to do. If it's not good, it's his fault. The prez told me to. This is for president, see? The president told me to. As you get into this, realizing the calling of God on your life, I think it's a natural question, should be a natural question to all of us, to basically say, what does this mean? What does it mean that God has called me to do something that he views as so important? What is my role here? You know, so on and so forth. One of the things I do hear a lot from people, Christian or non-Christian, is basically just this idea of, okay, I'm a musician, but I don't really have a responsibility for the things I say or the things I do. I'm just like everybody else. So I just wanted to say really quickly about how ridiculous that is, because I think we all know that you're on a platform, you're on something that someone sees you. I kind of was equating it to a father that is refusing to believe that their son is watching what they do. You know, like a son imitates what they see their father doing. You know, it's just natural, and it's supposed to be. You teach your kids to tie their shoes or to do that. You're teaching them to do these things because you believe that what you're doing is worthy of imitation. And so to believe that your kids aren't watching you is just as completely ridiculous as thinking that I'm on stage, I'm a Christian, but they shouldn't listen to me because my life is all screwed up. Ridiculous. Fix your life. Okay. So this draws me a question, which is basically, what does this mean? And some of you guys say, okay, I'm a Christian. What are you saying that I need to do with my life? And what are you saying that I need to do with my music or my art to make a stand for Christ, this and the other? I think the best thing for me to say this, what I want to do is I want to just kind of strip all of the music away, all the art. I basically want to say lowest common denominator, because this is really important, is that whatever you choose to do in your life, if you're an electrician, if you're a plumber, whatever, musician, all of our lives are, again, they are a gift from God. It's his time. So you're here on earth in this body, and your body is on loan from God. It doesn't belong to you. Your talents don't belong to you. I think it comes down to this basically, is that, I should have written this down, the scripture I had in my mind. Help me somebody, about living sacrifices, your spiritual act of worship. Present your... That's what I'm talking about. That's the scripture I should have written down that I had in my mind I wanted to share. Basically what I'm saying is this, is you're forgetting all these things before we start saying, what do I do? What does God want me to do with my life? It has to come down to a decision on whether or not you are a disciple of Christ or not. If you're not a true disciple of Christ, then everything else I have to say doesn't matter at all because it's all based on, are you going to give your life on God's altar as your living sacrifice to him? And if that's not the case, if you don't see all of your life decisions, in other words, if you are separating your spiritual life and your practical life being my job, my school, my relationship, if you're separating those things, then you have what I would consider to be a true imbalance of what it means to be a disciple of Christ. If it comes down to saying, no, all of my life belongs to God, all of it's my spiritual act of worship, then this question, in my mind, becomes a lot easier, because it means you want to use your gift, you want to use your life to honor God. So that's question number one for me. Are you willing to present yourself as a living sacrifice to Christ? whether doing, music or not, just like I say. If you say, yes, that's what I want to do, yes, I'm going to talk about musicians specifically now because that's my life. If you're a musician, yes, I presented myself to Christ as a living sacrifice. I want to know God. Then this to me is where the little distinctions come in. And I do want to be really clear with you guys that I'm not someone that thinks that if you're a Christian and a musician, then that means you have to do A, B, C. You know what I mean? So I'm not somebody that thinks that if you say that, you have to present the gospel at every concert you play, or you have to be in a worship band, or you have to sing about Jesus, so on and so forth. You understand what I'm saying? I don't believe those things are true. I think that God has unique callings for all of us to do, and I think it's up to you to find out what those things are, right? Fair enough? So, maybe this will help you in your thinking. I would like to share my passion. I got a good quote from Harry Potter. There's this quote that I always say to my wife that I really love, which is, you guys will know it. That girl, you're such a nerd. I like you. You're all Harry Potter nerding out. You'll know this quote then when he says, "The time has come, Harry, to choose between what is right and what is easy." That's a wicked quote, right? That's not in the Bible. It's from Harry Potter. The time has come to choose between what is easy and what is right. And I want to give an example of that, one here, because, for instance, I'm a very big Martin Luther King Jr. fan. And I was thinking about this amazing, he was a real prophet to his people. And an amazing thing that he kept preaching this civil rights over and over and over, even in the face of death, knowing that was going to happen. And it's very easy for me to imagine having a wife and kids and so on and so forth, thinking it would be much easier to preach that message, just not so much. You know what I mean? Or choose where I say it or whatever, because I don't want to die. I've got kids here and this other. But he was somebody who really chose the right thing over the easy thing. And I think what I'm getting at here is I think a lot of Christians that want to play in bands, they want to do music, they choose what's easy rather than what's right. And frankly, what's easy is just playing music because you like it. You know what I'm saying? It's easy because it's fun and it's wonderful and it touches your soul and it's soulish and it's wonderful and emotional. But God might have something harder for you to do that is actually better for the kingdom of Christ, right? I obviously don't need to say the same with Jesus. It would have been much easier for Jesus to have continued to live a perfect, blameless life and do all the right things and not have died on a cross or not have gone back into Jerusalem knowing that he was going to be killed, right? We don't need to talk about that much because that's pretty obvious, I think. So coming into this, again, I want to make sure that nobody feels any condemnation from me. I'm not telling you need to do something, okay? And I have friends in this world that are Christian musicians that, that all of us would know that frankly don't feel a calling to preach the gospel on stage. And they don't feel a calling to talk about Jesus at concerts or on their website or whatever it may be. And they're really fantastic Christian people, and that's between them and the Lord. So I'm not trying to condemn anybody if you feel you have a different calling than what I do. However, I do want to challenge you in this about between what is easy and what is right, because I think that some of us don't realize the power that music really has to change a nation, to change the world. And I think this is my question for all of us is, if you have put your life on that sacrifice, on the altar as a living sacrifice to Christ, if you do want to be used by God in your music, then my question is I just don't know why you wouldn't want to take that opportunity to make a difference in your generation, in the whole world for Christ. It just seems like a waste of time. I mentioned earlier about how God seems to, music seems to be such an important thing to the Lord. And I want to make sure I say this right so nobody thinks I'm saying musicians are better than everybody else. But I think what I want to try to say is this. Let's say that you're a plumber. God's called you to be an electrician, whatever, in your town. What I'm saying is that you can live a wonderful life to Christ, You can change your neighborhood for Christ. You can change your city for Christ. Or the scope of what God can use an artist to do is literally worldwide. There's no stopping it. You know what I mean? And it's the absolute scope of it is so amazing to think that even when I was writing my notes down last night, because I believe music can change the world and has changed the world. But as I was making my notes, I was thinking, I even wrote down, John, this sounds very grandiose, and it sounds kind of, did you guys see School of Rock? Jack Black, like, one great concert can change the world. It sounds kind of like a joke. Until I wrote down the fact that Bono will be remembered for starting a world revolution to stop extreme poverty in Africa. Literally changed the world with his music. From his platform, it's not just his music that's been impactful, it's him as a man. He's used that platform to stand for something. On the other side, you have other people that have stood for things. John Lennon, the Beatles, obviously reshaped music in the way that no one ever had at that time, and is still looked at as a grandfather of that. But also, the Beatles were one of the first bands to openly sing about drug use. I say open because maybe the time wasn't so open, but it's pretty clear it was open now. And when you think of one of the first bands really singing about drugs and being open that, you think of the Beatles. You guys might think I'm harsh when I say this, but another person that is changing the world with their music right now is Katy Perry. She's going to be someone who will be remembered for influencing tween girls to feel comfortable exploring kissing other girls. Isn't that great? Wouldn't you like to be known for that? And then I thought, some people are going to think I'm being very harsh right now, but you probably don't have a 9-year-old daughter. Come on, don't start preaching. You don't have a 9-year-old daughter saying, why is she saying she kissed a girl and it felt wrong but kind of felt right? That's when you start, oh yeah. That was my David dance. You see that? Sweat. Anyway, my point is that it might sound grandiose to change the world with your music, but you can change the world for a good thing or for a bad thing. And it seems pretty clear to me anyway. I'm not the best at writing this down, but I hope it seems clear to you that it might sound ridiculous. One great concert can change the world. But you know what? Why not? You know what I mean? I've been reading my Old Testament lately, by the way. It's pretty good. It's pretty weird. I'm not going to lie about that. But, God used people. God would change a nation in a day. You know what I mean? They've been defying God and worshiping Baal and idols of Baal, and then God calls up Gideon. And within 3 days, he's gone and killed 100,000 people. Don't kill anybody. It's a metaphor for how God can change things quickly. So going back to it, so what has God called you to do? I think, in my mind, here's some options I have. This is just my opinion, okay? Again, don't be condemned about anything I may say today. It's between you and the Lord, praying about what is called. But you might feel called to play music and sing what I call blatant Christian lyrics. You may feel called to be a worship band. We play with Casting Crowns, something like that is very much a band that is God has given to Christians to help their faith, and to encourage them and so on and so forth. And I think it's great. Maybe God's called you to do that. Maybe God's called you to be what I call ambiguous lyrics, but yet you have overt statements of faith at a concert, on the internet, whatever that may be. I would see something like that, kind of like U2. U2 is a band that's, that I wouldn't consider a Christian band. They don't necessarily sing, Christian songs under the umbrella of what I'm talking about today, but yet their songs are full of faith. They are full of biblical things that you can pick up on, and then that platform has been used to do some real amazing things in the earth. You know that the One campaign, One campaign was started by Bono. One campaign has, I'm trying to think what they sent me because we're a part of the One campaign, but whatever, they've raised enough money to save 5 million kids from AIDS over the last year or something. It was the most craziest number I couldn't even imagine the idea that that kind of poverty could go away. But I think it's absolutely possible from the amazing things that not just one campaign, but other people are doing. Anyway, that's kind of a side point, but I think that's pretty awesome. Or maybe God's called you. Like I say, I know people that say, I don't feel called to sing Christian music. I don't feel called to be open about my faith. I don't feel called to ever talk about Jesus ever. I want to be an in-the-closet Christian. You see how I use those two things? In-the-closet Christian? I don't know if that's weird, but I know people like that. And I believe that they're real Christians who want to live the life. So I guess that's the thing. But for me, what I wrote in here, this is for me personally. I believe that the only non-option, if you have sacrificed your life on the altar for Christ, the only non-option is to never sing about, never talk about, nobody ever finds out that you are a secret Christian. And the reason I say that, again, in my own opinion, is because, you know, you write music from the overflow of your heart. You write about what you're passionate about. You know, if you love a woman, you're going to write a song for her. That's just the way it is, you know. If you love ice cream, you might write a song about it. Your love is better than ice cream. Sarah McLachlan. That's right. My wife listens to stuff like that. I listen to Megadeth, whatever. Anyway, you write from the overflow of your heart. And I just want to say, if all of us here, I know a lot of you guys are young. I'm not young anymore. But if you can imagine your life after marriage, after kids, 60 years old, you know, whatever it is in your life, looking back on how you spent your time, how you spent your talents for God, how you use those talents. I just have a hard time imagining most of us committed believers feeling good about having any vocation, whether it's music or any other vocation in the world, about not having a chance to use that to make a statement for Christ. I just don't see how it's possible. Even if it just means the people that, like I say, you do their plumbing in their house, and people say, you do a really great job, whatever, you have relationships with people, and out of that natural friendship, you begin to talk about your relationship with Christ. I think that most of us would look back. I know for me personally, if I had done Skillet and not talked about the Lord, Skillet has gotten a lot more, you know, successful in the last few years, sold a lot more records. Our latest record is almost sold 1 million units now. If I had looked back on these last 3 years and realized that all of that happened because I stopped talking about Christ, I would have a very difficult time living with myself. You know what I mean? I think I would just think, what an absolute waste of your talents for God. That's me personally. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So that's my challenge to all of you guys. Don't choose what's easy. Don't make music just because it satisfies your soul, even though that's really good. It's great to make music, great to use your talents. But maybe in your life, music, art, whatever you're doing, ask God to give you what's the best thing. And I believe in the end, when you're standing before Christ, throwing down your crowns, I think we all would feel that was the better option. A little pain will go a long way, I think, in joy before I start preaching. Yep. All right, that's all I want to say. Short. If any of you guys would like to ask any questions, you can ask me anything you want to. I'd love to talk.